Did you just throw your phone?
No, I did not throw the phone.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Beg Pardon. As always, I'm your host Anthony, joined by Carlos.
Woo.
And welcome to the show. How's it going, Carlos?
It is going pretty well. I don't know why I held it out so long.
Right. Did you see, as of this morning, we are officially on Pandora?
I did.
Yes.
I did. And I think it's because we pressured them so much that our listener base was like, listen, Pandora.
Right, yeah. I was like, is this too good to be true? Is this really them? But yeah, so we're on. So now
Hopefully
we'll have to come up with a different closing.
I was going to say, hopefully they don't go back and listen to the other ones and be like, is that so?
And now you're off. And now you're off. So today we're actually going to be diving into the little throwback, and I see like your T-shirt. There's a, we're talking about the '90s, specifically our childhoods. Similarly. Why do I even go about saying words that I know I can't say? Similarly, I think that's it.
It sounds right to me. So
yeah, yeah. To our Tuesday episode, where we talked about kind of like our past, and we were recounting jobs that we had together. We wanted to throw a little throwback even a little bit farther and kind of talk about our lives growing up. Hopefully it resonates with a lot of our listeners, because our listener base, we all share a generational commonality for the most part.
yeah.
For the most part. So, yeah. Okay. So, we both grew up in extremely different parts of the country.
Yeah, this is a tale of two cities right here.
Right, yeah. So paint me a picture. Paint me a picture, Bob Ross, and show me where, give me the 1990, early 1990s landscape of your environment.
So not a lot of happy trees in my environment.
All you need is a dream in your heart, a little practice.
Yeah,
So
a lot of
we're already, yeah,
a lot of concrete and tears. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. That should have been the if I write an autobiography, that's going to be the title, The Concrete and Tears.
Concrete and Tears by Carlos Gonzalez.
But yeah, it was cool. It was, we all grew up the same financially, so no one really, we didn't go to school with kids who were like, oh, you don't have this. Like, we all had the same thing. Like, if somebody had knockoffs, for the most part, we all had knockoffs. So it wasn't like, we didn't have to deal with that growing up too much. And you really, you learned a lot about a lot, because you have to grow up so fast, because you get hustled if you don't, pretty much. And you're always around.
Do you want to tell people where you grew up? Because some people don't know.
Oh, yeah. So I grew up in Brooklyn, folks.
People are like, you're getting hustled. They're like, where are you getting hustled at?
Yeah, no. I grew up in Brooklyn. The good old NY. Right here. That's where the Yankee cap comes in from. But yeah.
They're like, you don't say.
Yeah. They're like, you're a bandwagon fan.
Right.
They're like, anybody can go to Lids.
Right. Ooh.
Somebody had some $20. But yeah, it was cool. It was loud, but it was tight knit. Like, for the most part, we knew everyone within like a 2 or 3 block radius. Not almost everyone we knew. So it was cool because, if any of the kids got in trouble or if anything happened, every parent would vouch for that kid. Be like, no, he's a good kid. Or every parent would beat the brakes off of you because they all knew you and your parents were fine with it. Like, I couldn't go in the street until I was 9 unless my next door neighbor was with me. So I couldn't cross the street unless my next door neighbor was out with me or somebody else. So if I put a foot into that asphalt off of the concrete, my ass was at fault.
I know I don't have much life left. But up to this point, you the man.
Yeah. It was over.
Yeah. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, it was it was a great time, and I'm glad I grew up where I grew up. But I wouldn't raise my kids where I grew up. But I'm glad I grew up where I grew up.
All right. I grew up very differently. I don't think it's fair to call Ohio the Midwest, but people do all the time. So I guess the Midwest. It seems to me like that's like the Mideast. Like,
Yeah.
if Virginia is the East, Ohio is like the Mideast.
Yeah, Midwest's like Montana to me.
Right. West is California. Whatever. But so I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. Now, yeah, my community was also very tight knit and very close, mainly because they were all related, or because there was only like 186 people, literally. I didn't live in a city. I didn't live in a town. It didn't even qualify as a town. It was the village. It was literally qualified as a village. So it was very, very small. And there's pros to that and there's cons to that. There are pros. It was extremely safe. Extremely. I would go into random people's houses all the time. And nothing ever, like, sick happened.
You can't hurt me. Come on. All you got. Come on.
Thank God.
Thank God. Because it was just and I mean, part of that could have been because of the 90s, like the time that we grew up.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different now. But I grew up in such a small town. And the whole thing, like you were saying, like all the parents know each other, all the people know each other, all the people you go to school with. Everyone's related almost. It was really quiet. Socioeconomically, everyone was about the same. I think there was probably more fluctuation on my end than there was yours. Because once we were able to go to school, obviously, you're not going to have an entire school system for a town of 186 people, let alone, or 286, however many people there were. It was under 300. But a town that small of people, period, let alone children. So we had a bunch of people from different areas all going to the same school, different rural areas. So there was a little bit of fluctuation in like socioeconomic status, but nothing like too incredible. There was a racial disparity. That was probably the only thing that was like very evident and alarming, is that I went to school with virtually no one that looked like me. But in my whole life, not even in the school, outside of the school, there was no one. I mean, for those of you guys that don't know, I was adopted by like two white parents. Like,
What? Oh my God! Who told you?
it was just it was at home, at school, like it didn't matter. So it really didn't affect me that much. We had, I don't know, like here's the thing. I don't know if this was the case in New York, and I'm sure it was on the East and West Coast. I feel like you guys get what's hot like quicker, and then the rest of the country takes like the lead after that. So
Right.
so we were like getting like in 6 months' time we were catching on to what y'all were doing. So I mean, to us, we didn't know any different, but we definitely weren't like trendsetters in Northeast Ohio. Like it wasn't it wasn't anything like spectacular. And again, we didn't have access. Like I said in a previous episode, like my town that I grew up in got a Dollar General in like 2011, and you would have thought, I mean, hell, new times. Like,
Mall of
so there
America.
was no, I mean, the next town over, the only place that you could really buy that was exclusively clothes was Goodwill. There was like a Goodwill, there was a Family Dollar, they sell clothes, and then there was a store, did you guys have Ames? Do you remember Ames in the 90s?
I don't think we had Ames. No.
It was Ames. And that was kind of like a Walmart, maybe.
Okay.
Kind of like that. So we were able to get like clothes and stuff like that, or like school clothes. I think like as far as like trends go, we didn't get. I mean, everyone. Fashion trends. I should clarify that. Fashion trends, I think, start on the East and West Coast. Everything else, I think, happens at the same time. Like, did you remember whenever I was like really thinking, whenever I knew that we were going to do this episode, I was thinking like, what was like life like? What did we have? And I didn't have like, do you remember the Tamagotchis?
Oh yeah, I had a T-Rex.
Yeah, and you raise your pet or whatever. And I preface this before I preface this like I'm not a monster, because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to say this on the show or not, but every time I would get in trouble, like in real life, I would like run to my room and I'd be like, punish. Like the little Tamagotchi pet. And I was like, now that I'm older, I was like, wow, that's kind of dark. Like, it's kind of sick.
Yeah.
Like, I would like take out my aggression until the pet died or whatever. And it would like, they would always either die from like starvation or like neglect, because then like just like regular games, like you get something and then you're like, not really that into it. But it's nice because it was on a keychain and you could put it on your little your little belt loop, your little Wrangler pants or whatever you're wearing. Yeah, your JanSport. But yeah, those, I mean, as far as like handhelds go, that was like cool. Remember, Burger King came out with whenever Pokemon. I mean, Pokemon was big for a long time. But
still, yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember like the little it almost like a Game Boy.
Oh, yeah. Wait.
But it wasn't.
Was that Burger King?
It was Burger King.
Oh.
I'm 100% certain of the restaurant.
I remember when Burger King came out with like the big Pokeballs, and when you opened it, it was like that gold-plated
card.
Like Pikachu and all. Yeah.
Or whatever. Yeah.
I remember that. I
had like
imagine
a yellow one, like a little game. It wasn't like a Game Boy, but it was.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the closest thing I'm gonna get to a Game Boy, so I better get. I better get used to it. And it wasn't until I was like in middle school, where we would go over to the next town over, and we went to the library, and we could play like Minesweeper. Is it Minesweep? Where you just click. I still don't know how to play to this day. But
yeah, you just hope that you don't hit the bombs.
Right, and you just like.
Yeah, no one knows how to play that.
Right. Oregon Trail. That was like in regular school.
Yeah.
Your school was different.
Much different
compared to mine. Yeah. You guys had. I mean, I'm just imagining like iron bars on the windows and like active shooter drills and real sick shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had that. The higher floors didn't have the bars, but the first floor had bars. And I remember also the teachers had like this giant like rod to open the window, because the windows were so big that they had to like poke it into this hole and pull the window down because the windows were massive. Yeah. And then I remember also they had phones in the classes, like they were calling the bullpen. Like they would just pick up the phone and call the office, and then be like, I told him you're on your way down. And they would just like go back and then hang it up.
He's on his way. Get the hell out. Yeah.
That's pretty much what it was like. But yeah, the school itself was big. And I was telling my wife about this. I remember too when we used to, in the morning we'd go to school, and we would all have to sit in like the auditorium, and they pull down this like giant screen from the auditorium, and while you're waiting for kids to funnel in, or even teachers to funnel in because traffic, like you were watching like Bobby's World or Reading Rainbow, like they had that just on the screen for us. So we were like, that's kind of cool.
That's kind of nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't have anything like that. We didn't even have to wait. In high school, we did have to do that, like wait in the auditorium at the gymnasium for the beginning of class, or like whenever all the buses were coming in and stuff. And in middle school, we had to do that. In elementary school, we didn't. I think it was just if you ate lunch, like school lunch, everyone like hung out in the cafeteria. Maybe we did have to hang out in the cafeteria. I don't really have a recollection. But I was like a little walker. We had like little walker passes. I walked to school, and there was a lady who would like give us food like every day on the way to school. We ate at home. I don't want to go off the
I was like,
we didn't eat. Sorry, Mom. But we this lady, like, she would just give us like treats and stuff like that. And then there was, I think I mentioned this on another episode, there was a cop, we just called him the Pop Cop. and he was just like this old guy, and he was like trying to like form like good bonds with the neighborhood and show him that like police aren't bad. And he'd just drive around, and his cruiser in the back would be full with like cans of pop, and we'd all like run to him. We're like, pop cop, and we'd all run there after school, and he'd tousle our hair, and we'd take the take the soda pop out of the back of his car.
It sounds terrifying.
Yeah, but it was just I grew up in genericville, USA.
Yeah.
Like very quintessential 90s.
Mayberry.
Huh?
Like Mayberry, basically.
Yeah. It was just very Plainsville, and we, like, my parents, they just had two working parents, just like most of the kids in the neighborhood, and you know what I noticed too? Like, kids are never, like, outside. Like, we were outside constantly, and not even because, like, we didn't have the same games or the same opportunities, like, for indoor activities. Even though we didn't, we still wanted to be outside. Don't you have recollection of that? Like, we were like, I actually want to be outside, and I actually want to play, like, football, or I want to go play basketball, or whatever. And now kids are like, why are you outside? How childish. That's the other thing. Yeah. Like, kids now, I mean, they're so grown. They're
little
so
savages.
Grown. Yeah.
Yeah.
You see them, like, 12 years old, and they're acting like they're 19, 20-year-old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't know half these words. What's happening?
Well, that's the internet for you right there.
Yeah.
But I mean, also, like, it was just a crazy time because, like you said, that, I mean, well-meaning cop, to me, it sounds terrifying, but in your neighborhood, he was a man.
Yeah.
But, like, we had stuff like that. We had a pizzeria on the corner where we would go in and get stuff, and sometimes, like, if I didn't have enough or anything, he'd be like, just have your dad stop by when he gets out of work. So my dad would just go down and pay my tab, basically, and that was it. And it was cheap. Like, for like a quarter or 50 cents or something like that, you can get like Italian ices. So we were set. And then the Good Humor truck used to come around, and the Good Humor truck, man, this man had sodas, hot dogs, crybabies, warheads, ice cream. He was everything.
Warheads, those were the thing. The warheads were like the snack of choice for like all the badass kids.
Yeah, and Crybaby was like the gums. Yeah.
Yeah. Those were really cool.
Warheads.
I loved warheads, except for the black ones. Like in the black container, they were like the worst. And I was like,
Oh, the black cherry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't have like an ice cream guy. Again, the towns I think was too small. The closest thing we had was like this weird guy that the swans, man.
Oh yeah.
And that's what he sells frozen dinners. Like it wasn't like he sold. It wasn't like he had the little song playing and like all the kids were running. We'd be like, Mom, the swans guy's here. You want some ice cream? That was it. But like I mean, in terms of like things that you remember, like have cognitive memory of. What do I remember? Like, I was too young to understand the implications of it. But like Bill Clinton, the Monica Lewinsky thing, I remember that.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that, and now looking back on it, we talked about it a couple times. She is the strongest person I think I've ever seen in my life, because people gave her so much crap. She was 22 when all of that happened. And the most powerful man in the world, is basically like, you don't have a choice per se.
Come here, Toots. Like, yeah.
So what do you do? And then instead of people like really going after him, they just went after her hard. Like, how dare you? He was a married man. Like, that marriage was the prime example for America, basically. Like, they were the Kennedys or something, which even the Kennedys' marriage. But like, everyone was like, how dare you? Like, I can't believe you would do that. And she just was on the cover of every tabloid, everything, to the point where she was in that interview, and she was saying, like, she couldn't get a job because people saw her name and they were just like, And they asked her, like, why, like, you should have changed your name. Why didn't you change your name?
Yeah, she should.
And she was, she was like, when I came in, you still would have knew who I was. So you would have been like, you lied on this application.
Right.
But then, like, also
Could
she
you
was
imagine?
like, he didn't have
Could
to.
you imagine where she was like,
Yeah. Yeah, honey.
"Yeah, it's me." Like, imagine. Hey guys, it's me.
But also, like, how can you go into a job interview and just be like, I can't believe this girl who's now 24. She threw her whole life away. She didn't really do anything. Like,
Yeah, but you know, people. I mean, they weren't. People would have looked at that application, and they would have been like, "Slut." Like it would have been like just like that. Like they don't
Yeah.
care.
She'd
Because
been harassed
and
in the
also too,
office.
and also too. I mean, like Bill Clinton was like that. Bill Clinton was the man. Like instead of being like,
was.
how powerful was this? How like look at the position of power he was in. Blah 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 blah. They're like, how dare you tear apart the first family of this country? How disgusting. How and it was never like Bill Clinton was just like this, like fallen angel almost, and she was like this harlot with a scarlet letter that took him down
yeah.
and seduced him, and like it was not. It was the opposite of that.
Yep.
You know, it was a fox in the hen house, and it wasn't her.
Let's do a little. Where are they now? And see how
Yeah.
their lives.
Not
I
looking
think
too
Monica.
good.
I think she came out on top. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
Monica's doing pretty well.
Yeah, I think she's all right now. That
But
was,
yeah, I remember that. That was a big like.
yeah.
That was the first big scandal I remember in my lifetime.
Yeah. And shortly thereafter, you remember whenever, I mean, the whole Y2K thing, everyone thought the world would end that New Year's Eve on midnight, and people were stocking up on waters, and then they said all the computers were going to crash.
Yeah.
We didn't, I don't remember if we had a computer. I don't think we did. I'm almost certain we didn't yet. But I was like, this is
We
the
did.
end.
Yeah, we did. We had one. I remember, like, I don't know if it was just like my family didn't care, but no one really panicked that much that I remember.
Same. I just remember it because I saw it on TV.
Yeah, like I remember that because we saw it on TV, but I don't remember like my parents ever being like, "Oh my gosh, this is it."
Right.
I think they were just like, "Okay."
If we die, we die. Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, some of you are too young to remember this. So, like, they're
Right.
like,
Yeah. If you get wiped from the earth, it's not even going to bother you.
you didn't really set foundation yet, so you're good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I saw it on the news. I think that started my infatuation with the news. So my dad would always watch the Today Show. Oh, that did not. Matt Lauer did not. That did not age well. But he, like, I would see him and what's his name, the weather guy.
Oh, Al Roker.
Al Roker. He was big, small again.
He was.
Katie Couric. So those were like the squad to me. And I was
Those
like,
were the
this is what-
Titans.
yeah, I was like, this is what truth is. This is like
Matt
Kid
Lauer
News Media. Right, yeah, did not age well. None of this ages well. Yeah, I trust these people. How time flies. But my dad would always watch that in the mornings, and we would watch. Do you remember a show? I don't remember if it was on Disney or Nickelodeon. Madeline, and it had the French lady.
Oh yeah.
She's like,
Something is not right.
she'd like run down the hallway. That was like our show, because like again, it's weird how things just stick in your mind that seemingly were probably not that prevalent, but they seem prevalent to you. Like in my mind, I watched Madeline and went to the chiropractor every day as a child, even though I know I didn't. But like in my mind, I was like, I went to Dr. Brown every day. Because that's all I, like, for some reason, I don't know why, I hope I don't have to go deeper into that, but I just remember being like, wow, there's something that sticks out about this doctor's office, and I was there all of the time. But now I also look back, I find it was weird that I was, like, prepubescent and seeing a chiropractor on a regular basis. That was kind of weird.
I feel like the more we dig into this, the more things that we're like,
Right. Right. Maybe we should stop digging. Maybe we should talk about something else.
I remember though, like, the TV I felt was so much. I felt like entertainment on TV, not movies, was so much better. Like especially kids entertainment.
Well, it wasn't like there was less animated stuff.
Well, there was animated stuff, but it looked good.
I've been denied everything, even my revenge!
Like the animation actually looked legit, whereas like now some of the cartoons, like Rick and Morty, it's not.
That's not for kids. That's not. For
No, but I'm
kids.
saying the animation style. Like that's the same kind of animation style of like Adventure Time and things like
Yeah.
that. Like that doesn't
I even
look that.
question if Adventure Time is for kids. Like I
It's
think
odd.
I think what we've allowed, and I don't like sounding like this, but it's the truth. Like I think what we've allowed as like because those of you guys that know, I'm not a conservative person in thought or practice at all. But I do think that the what we find like acceptable for children now is not good. Like I don't know what else
kind of
to
like
say it.
push the
Yeah,
boundaries.
the barometer has changed. And kids are growing up like way faster than they should, and I think that's partly like I don't know an age group of people that have more mental health issues than millennials, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think that's due in part to things that are out of our control, like what we've experienced in a lifetime, and things that like were just the advent of technology and all of these different things. I mean, we had to get used to it, and we had to find out what. We were almost like guinea pigs. Like, okay, let's see if this fucks them up, and if it does, we'll do better with the next batch. You know, like we'll do better with the next, but we'll add more parental controls on on the next batch. But let's go out and that's what I feel like the life of the oldest child is. Like, ugh. Well, honey, we got a couple more tries to get it right. Like that's how I feel. And usually by the last one, you're so beat down, you're like, I don't give a shit. This kid's gonna come out the way it's gonna come out. As long as he stays alive and out of prison, job well done.
Even if it's one stint in prison, maybe. It depends
Right.
what it was.
Right. Yeah. System's getting a little wacky anyways.
I just remember though, like being hyped for commercials, because like
No.
the toy commercials
Like
were
what?
so cool.
Okay. Just
Like-
like toys, not commercials in general.
Well, like the toys and also the Now CDs and stuff. Because I was always like, they made a playlist just for me. Like even as a kid, I
Yeah.
was like, this is so cool.
Every song I ever wanted to listen to on
Yeah.
repeat.
I'm
Yeah.
just like, yes.
Now now that's what I call music, and now they have like 300 volumes of it, and I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
not that old. How's that?
It didn't pan
Possible.
out the way they thought.
No, they're like, oh, we have a new volume every week. And I'm
And
like,
I
okay, that
also-
makes sense.
That makes sense. I remember the Shirley Temple commercials too, where they would always show like Shirley Temple's collection on VHS.
Bubblegum or what is bubblegum droplets? That's not it.
No.
Something in her soup.
Yeah.
Monkeys and bananas, loop de
Loop to loop. Yeah.
Something sick.
Oh, man.
Something sick. I don't know.
Animal
it
crackers.
wasn't sick, but it's animal crackers in my soup. Monkeys
Yeah,
and bananas.
monkeys and
loop de loop.
rabbits.
And then you didn't realize. You didn't realize that like at the airing of those commercials. I mean, she was what, like 60, 70 years old. I didn't.
Yeah.
I was like,
Was
I
she
was like, she was like,
alive?
oh. Yes, I think she's still alive now.
Is she?
Yes.
She lived
Shirley,
a
if
life
you're
then,
watching,
Shirley
Shirley,
Temple.
Shirley, if you're watching, let us know how you're
Yeah,
holding
she led
up,
a
girl.
life.
Yeah.
She got a drink named after her.
You know, for the longest time, I really thought Shirley Temple and John Benet Ramsey were the same person. Because they were the only two little girls. Well, they were the only two little girls I heard of in my childhood.
Oh, okay.
Very stark, different stories there.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that. I forget how old we were whenever that happened, but I remember. I don't remember that, but I remember like. I remember people
was
talking
everywhere.
about it, but I don't remember. Yeah. Or at the grocery store near the checkout, and it
The
was all
tabloids
there,
and stuff.
Yeah, that are still
Yeah.
there to this day. You even still see on the tabloids now them talking about that.
Yeah.
Still.
That was. I think that might have been the first big scandal I remember, because I'm pretty sure that was before the whole Monica Lewinsky stuff. I
think
want to
so,
say
too.
that was. So that was probably the first big thing. But I mean, even when you look back at it, the 90s were just such a crucial time in general. Like not just in like for our childhood and stuff, but in like 98, the economy was doing so well. It was the best it's been in like 30 or 40 years. Like the internet was starting to get big for us. So we had like this new thing to be like, oh my gosh, like Ask Jeeves came out in the 90s.
Right. I can ask Jeeves anything.
Yeah, like all that
He'll
stuff
tell me the
came out.
truth. Right.
And it was just so crazy how fast it felt like life was moving.
Yeah.
Like as a kid, you were like, oh my gosh, like we're going to be like the Jetsons. And I feel like people have been saying the Jetsons since the Jetsons first aired. Everyone was like, we're going to be like the Jetsons. No one's reached it yet.
My grandma said that because they used to be able to call people and like see them, like they'd pop up in holograms.
Ah, it's a phone. I'll get it.
Yeah.
But my grandma, like, I remember whenever she found out what Skype was, and she was like, my God. She was like, we didn't think that we'd have anything like this. This is like the Jetsons. And I was like,
The Jetsons was the
are.
barometer for everyone's like, this is where we're going to dream for kids.
that should tell you how we ended up where we're at. Like,
We went more like the Flintstones.
yeah, we really went the other way. But yeah, I mean, it was such a, I don't know. I wouldn't go back. I'm glad it's over. But
I would go back.
I would not go back
In a heartbeat.
Yeah, I wouldn't. But it was simpler. And I don't think that had so much to do with the 90s. I think it had so much to do with our our life. Like everything was less
I'll
complicated.
chalk it up to the time.
Everything was less complicated. There wasn't no, like, I wasn't worrying about like paying rent or anything like that. I was like,
Yeah.
God, I hope they have cinnamon applesauce at lunch and not regular. I remember thinking that a lot.
I always packed my lunch. So, like my mom or my dad, well, my mom would pack my lunch. My dad would sometimes draw on our like brown paper bags. 'Cause
How
we
nice.
didn't have lunch boxes, so he would sometimes draw on those. So that was cool. But I remember like everyone else would have like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and stuff, and I had like leftovers. So I had like rice and beans with like chicken tenders, like chicken strip, and people would be like, "Do you want to trade?" I'm like, "Get out of here! I don't want PB&J."
Yeah, you're like, I want a meal.
They were like, "Where'd you even heat that up at?"
My mom made it.
I was like, "The teacher's lounge, dude. Duh." Like,
Right. Even the teachers are like trying to take it. Like, hey, Carlos, like maybe
yeah.
get away from me. Stranger danger.
Stranger
Do you remember?
danger.
Do you remember the book? What was that called? It wasn't the book fair. Scholastic's book fair, I guess.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they'd come and they'd bring those big metal trunks, and then they would pop them open. We had the bookmobile. We thought we were fancy as hell. This huge RV type vehicle would come, and you'd walk in, and I was like, Jesus, there's a library in here. And it was like a library
A lot of
on
people
wheels.
like getting you to come to their cars in your town.
I know. Everyone get in the van. And that's what it was like.
That's terrifying.
But it was nice. It was nice to like leave class. So I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is nice, and like we could leave class and like go in the bookmobile and like check out different books or whatever. So that was cool. There was
used to have-
no.
I was say we used to
Go
have McGruff the crime dog. He used to come a lot.
No,
Sorry.
I did not have that. I was like, is
You
that
didn't
like
have that?
Clifford, or?
If you get my new comic activity book, More Adventures with Scruff, you'll find out what you can do about bullies and guns.
Yeah, he used
No.
to come a lot, and like either it was like a puppet with like the ventriloquist, or it was like a guy dressed up like in the mascot suit of McGruff the crime dog, and he would come with like his trench coat like flipped up and his hands in his pockets,
And a
talking to
cigarette
us
in his
about
mouth.
like, talking to us about crime and how we can snuff
Sup,
it
kids?
out. Like,
Right.
it was so weird now that I think about it, because it was like every year I remember McGruff coming, and I was always like, does this dog ever fight crime? Because he's always here. Like he was always just like right there with his trench coat.
We're gonna teach you kids how to find cocaine today. Like that's how I imagine them being. Yeah. You got to make sure you rub it on the gums. And they're like, the kids are like, okay.
Oh, that's one
We,
into the DARE program. Remember Dare? Remember the Dare program?
That I didn't experience that till high school.
We had that in junior high. Yeah.
We had one for athletes in junior high. Yeah.
Like just
and it was like all
athletes.
it was all like the junior high athletes, and I was like, I'm not gonna say her name because it's not sensitive, but like there was like a group of us that every time this girl would speak about like not smoking cigarettes or doing drugs or whatever, and I do not have firsthand accounts to this, so this was a rumor, but I had friends who alleged this. I did not experience it, but we're like, why would we listen to her? Like she's exchanging favors, if you know what I mean, for like packs of cigarettes outside. Like that's literally what was going on. Yeah. Whoa. It was real rough. Yeah, it was real rough. So we didn't really have a whole lot of respect for like the students that were like in charge of like keeping the streets safe.
Drug programs.
Yeah, it was weird. And we I don't know, I went to a school, my junior high and high school were relatively far from my house, so I had to ride the bus. And it was like a 40-minute bus ride. And we were the worst children. The absolute worst. So much so that we had been like, we were the worst children, but we also had the worst driver.
Yeah, I'm a little medicated. I met a very reliable doctor at a Cypress Hill concert, and he floated me a couple pills just to feel better.
Jackie, if you're listening, you were god awful. Like, I really mean it. God awful. She was really
leaves.
She was really hateful. She was super hateful. Like I feel like she hated kids a lot. So I mean that was tough. But there wasn't we all hung out. I'm sure you guys had this too, but like back in the day, I feel like there was a lot more like hanging out. So we would all hang out at like the community hall because there was like a big table there. So we all hung out there and we would all wear our Jinko jeans. You remember those?
Vaguely.
Jinko jeans. Hell, I could put 2 liters in those back pockets. They were so big. I literally had 2 liters in there. Everyone would drink their 2 liters and fill them up with water and then like stuff them in the back of their pants. And I was like, I don't know why I have a 2 liter in here, but I can carry it. There's no point to it.
We never had that.
We did. Yeah, Jinko jeans are this is starting to get into the 2000s whenever like we were going to that cross between like grunge and like pop music a little bit.
Okay.
So like that cross breed into that, and everyone like started doing like the whole like the Liberty spikes, and they'd wear little chokers and the Django jeans and the
now I remember
real baggy clothes. Some of them had chains like literally in the backs connecting both legs like in an X, and I was like, how do I walk with these? Do I just like scoot? Like I don't know how to walk. Those skater shoes started becoming a thing in the 90s, like the late 90s. Those were cool. There was like similar to your shirt, there was more like family type like TV.
Yeah, well they had TGIF.
It's Friday night and the mood is right.
It was that whole block. It was like Home Improvement.
I don't know what that is.
It was
it on Nickelodeon?
No, it was on ABC. And it was I think Home Improvement, Boy Meets World, Family Matters, like all of those around there. But they were all like in one block of night on Friday. So I think it started with Home Improvement and it went all the way through. Nice. But like they had like I was talking to my wife about it. Boy Meets World did an episode where it was like a Halloween episode, and at the end Sabrina the Teenage Witch came in. And I remember like even watching it again, I was like, Sabrina. And I was
crossover.
I told her, I was like, our kids are going to be like, okay, so this girl walked in. And I'm like, you don't understand.
Right. They're like, cool, Melissa Joan Hart's here. You're like, all right.
I'm like, do you remember the MCU? This was the MCU for us. Like, these universes just crossed.
Right. They're going to be... I mean, by the time your kids are old enough, they're going to be like the MCU. They will be. They're not going to be like... Oh my God, there'll be
kids, not my kids. Kids.
Oh, okay.
My kids are going to learn those, like, their ancient text. Like,
right. So
They're gonna be
why
like,
are these
these
so
are the
important?
stories. Yeah.
Right. Trying to tell people at school, and then they're like, no. Yeah,
Like,
don't
do you
do that
remember
to
the
your
big
kids.
battle in New York? Remember that big battle in 2012? The kids are gonna be like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah. How'd your parents survive that? Everything looked destroyed. You have like
Thank God
convinced
Thor
like they're
was there.
real. Yeah. I mean, guys, we're the lucky ones. Half the population was wiped out. Half the world. They're like, no, it wasn't.
And it just came back out of nowhere.
Right. Yeah. Thank God for Iron Man, right? What a sacrifice. It's weird that we don't see a lot of statues of him around. Right. I mean, my dad said something about them replacing a lot of those Confederate soldiers with him, but people just didn't want to do it.
I would sign a petition today if that was a petition.
Yeah. People were going to be like, well, that's what it is.
Give it a little more time. Robert Downey Jr., fingers crossed.
Speaking of which, I think everything back then was a little less... I think that's a change in the right direction. I think back then it was just unspoken, kind of. Like, just it is what it is.
Yeah.
With, like, race and all the struggles in the country. It was less talked about, but it was very... I mean, I lived in what used to be a sundown town. And my parents told me about that. Like, hey, like 20, 30 years ago, you wouldn't even be allowed outside after dark. They'd kill you.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember a handful of episodes. Like Family Matters had an episode where it showed his son.
They pulled him over. Yeah.
Because the point is that you two harassed my son because he's black.
You can't prove that.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I believe it had an episode similar to that too. So there was like a few episodes here and there where it kind of made America be like, look at yourselves. But then people shut the TV off and then that was it.
Kind of. Or after that, they'd be like, next on Cops. Watch us arrest only black people for an hour every day. Like that, they would just switch to that. So then you're like, ooh.
I still vividly remember, though, that Family Matters episode, because I think, like, sitcoms in the 90s, they played with that live studio audience and, like, the music. Like, it was a lot more in the feels. Yeah. Like, you felt it.
Yeah.
Now, everything's, like, real. There's no live studio. Like, it's on a set or it's on. But I feel like when you had that audience, like, you felt the gut punches. Like, you were like, oh, I feel the waterworks coming.
Yeah, and they exposed me to a world that I didn't know. Because you grew up in an extremely diverse area.
Yeah.
Arguably one of the most diverse in the United States, let alone the world. And I grew up like in a place that was not diverse at all. So to
The exact
see
opposite.
the exact opposite. So to see like how weird that there's like black families. Like that was weird for me. Or like. I think they have to be careful because there were a lot of kids like me that would see stuff like that, and like that's what I thought. Like I was like, so this is black people, or like seeing Cops, or seeing like in a more serious sense. I mean, that's all, and I'm sure other people in my community too. They have no idea of what it is. Like I personally know people that didn't meet like a person of another color or another race until they were well into their 20s and 30s. Imagine how jarring that is. Yeah.
Ooh.
So like, it's hard to like realize that and accept people whenever you're like, oh, this is weird.
Yeah.
And like now that I'm older, I realize like how sick the 17 and 1800s were, 1600s in the United States in regards to like slavery and the treatment of people of another race, or even the Japanese during World War II that were in the United States. And like you see all that now that you're older, but I distinctly have recollection that in the past, like in elementary school, it was never treated like that. Like U.S. history is like, I have never seen, and I'm sure they probably do it in other countries, I just don't know about it. But I've never seen people like, I mean, damn it. I wish I remember the name of those people. McGraw-Hill. They did all the textbooks. McGraw Hill.
Oh, yeah,
I was
McGraw
like,
Hill.
McGraw Hill. I mean, they got those people writing with rose tinted pens and rose tinted glasses, and I mean, they made the USA. I mean, we were martyrs for everything.
Yeah, McGraw Hill's like, we'll tell them what history was.
yeah. Slavery was something all over the world, but here in the good old US of A, we put an end to that real quick.
Yeah.
If I may, like that's the way it seems, and that's the way we learned it.
Yeah.
Like so much so, like I mean, the mentality of people in our class were like, God, I mean, black people, they should be so grateful. Thank God for us. Thank God for us in this country that they were able to live their lives to their truest potential. Like that's literally what it was in the 1990s and pre-1990s. I think now we're getting the wokeness. I don't like that word, but like the wokeness of the people were like, wow, this wasn't as it wasn't as rosy as a picture as what people wanted to paint it. And now the youth of today are being, I think, taught more truer statements and more truer events.
Yeah.
Mainly
Or they can
because
fact
they
check
have
it.
access. I'm about to say mainly because they have access to it. Back in the day, we didn't have access to that kind of stuff. I mean, like we were 5th or 6th grade whenever Ask Jeeves came out.
Well, when Ask Jeeves was like big.
Yeah,
because I would say it came out.
I mean, I didn't know what it was.
Right. Yeah.
But,
it wasn't
I mean,
mainstream
by the time,
yet.
Right. I guess I should have said that. Like by the time we knew what it was, that wasn't like a thing. So I think that that's been probably the biggest difference. I don't know. For me, it's been exhausting. I may sound like a whiner. And people outside of our generation love calling millennials whiners. They love it. They absolutely love it. All right, boomer. Like that's how that all starts. But like you have, like it's exhausting. I remember, like not even remember. I mean, this is what time is it? Like that's literally like it's just exhausting. That's why that's part of the reason why I was like, God, I can't imagine having kids. Hell, like it's a lot. It was so exhausting. I mean, 9/11, bird flu, not in the 90s, but like bird flu,
early 2000s.
Yeah.
Mad
weird cow. Y2K, mad cow, stock market crash, bank bailouts,
West Nile,
H1N1. Oh, I think I already said bird flu. But like you had all these.
You're just to use all the names that it's known.
Swine flu, yeah, swine flu. All of these things in a generation of people, and I think the catalyst was the 90s. Like there was just so much growth and boom in the 90s, and it really set like the tone for even where we're at today. I mean, there's so much growth. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that we would have some of the things that we have now.
Yeah.
And it grew so quickly in the 90s.
Yeah. Because people had the money.
Advancements and everything. Yeah.
I mean, for the most part,
good or bad.
The country.
Good or bad.
Yeah, the country had the money. I personally want to, like, this is my dream vision, is to build a community where everything looks like it did when I was a kid. Like the Burger King looks like a Burger King in the 90s. That McDonald's has like the red slanted roof. The Taco Bell has the weird shapes that no one knew why they had, like the circles and the squigglies, but they were there. And I appreciated them, Taco Bell. So if you want to bring them back, I'm all for it. Like, I miss those buildings so much. So much so that when Stranger Things did that, like, retro Burger King thing, I immediately went out and I got the biggest cup I could get, and I still have it. I washed it and everything, and I still had, like, a collectible because I was like, this is the Burger King I remember. Like,
I didn't know what Taco Bell was until I was, I don't know, 15.
It was better. They marketed to kids back then because remember McDonald's had like the VHS tapes, like the Halloween specials and stuff. They had like
I had all those tapes
and all of them. Yeah, they were
the Hamburglar and the
Hamburglar, Early Bird, and then Burger King got away with the Mighty Kids Club, and they literally put a kid in a wheelchair and named him Wheels. Like. If that no one thought that was okay, like
again, back then, I think it was just so like it is what it is. Back then, that was the mentality. Like, it is what it is.
They were just like,
Yeah. I mean, you know the damn boy's in Wheels. Like, that's what they would say. Everyone knows he's in Wheels. Like, and then you have people that were like, what I thought was funny was like flamboyance was admired. Like, now it's not admired. But you could not tell me one person who had said a bad thing about Richard Simmons in the 90s. You can't.
Yeah. Or Jack from Will and Grace.
Kind of.
People loved Jack from Will and Grace. But Richard Simmons, yeah, he was the man. Everyone was getting down to the oldies, sweating to the oldies with good old Richard. Because he also made you feel good, though. Like, he didn't put you down for being heavy or anything like that. He was just like, we're going to do this together. I mean, same with, like, Steve Irwin.
Who cares? This bloke could have enough venom in one bite to kill 100 blokes my size.
He was, when you look back, he was the man.
I think we're close to like 15 years to the day.
Yeah.
For that.
But he was the butt of the jokes back then. And he never, like, snapped at the public or anything. He was just like, I'm going to do what I do for the animals. So, like, we didn't deserve Steve Irwin. We really didn't.
Yeah.
He was the gem of the 90s that I wish I could bring back. Like,
yeah. He was the gem of the 90s I wish Bill Cosby would have ended up being. Like, that's how, I mean, in the 90s, he was the dude. He was the dude.
Yeah.
America's dad. Yeah, America's dad. And like,
Bob Saget was too, ironically, for Full House.
Yeah. But he had a whole, that whole, like, he had like this like real raunchy side to him, and like his comedy and stuff, and everyone knew that. So I thought that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
But all of them, I mean, there was like a group of, I think that's different. I'm not condoning any type of negative behavior, but I think it's so difficult, even back then and today, to prop people up to unrealistic, to inhuman expectations. Like, there are people that are successful in the entertainment industry who are bad because there are bad people in the world. Like, that's the world. That's human behavior. So I think that, I mean, it was exceptionally difficult back then because there was, I guess, a less, like, I don't know, a less controversial, less woke group of people. So it was very squeaky clean to a certain degree. Like, you didn't hear. Now I hear things on the radio, and I hear things on music, and I hear things on TV. Like, I would never hear the word God on TV back in the 90s. Like, I would never hear GD. I would never hear
you would never hear
cuss words. Now you do, and I never did before.
Yeah,
never. And
you would hear God,
shocking.
and you would hear God in the 90s if it was like
in a reverent
Boy Meets
way,
World.
and
like when what's his name, Turner, the teacher, was in the hospital, and Sean was like,
"Don't blow me off, God. I've never asked you for anything, and I never wanted to come to you like this."
Which, even as a kid, I was like,
yeah, I was like,
But that was the only time you heard it, was like people like bartering or like praying for their friend's life, like, not him. Because it did that in Happy Days too, when Fonzie was praying for Archie. He was like, I don't do this often, and I don't know if I'm doing it right. And that was another moment I was like, on a rerun, obviously, because Happy Days was like 30 years old by that point.
I was like, your age is showing.
They're like, wow, he looks really good for his age. But
I mean,
yeah,
I'm 60.
but
you'd watch those and you'd be like, no, not today, not today.
Yeah. You're like, oh. But yeah,
Three's Company, that was like my thing too. Three's Company.
That was like TV Land reruns.
Yeah. Again, rerun. Yeah, they were reruns in the 90s of like Three's Company, The Brady Bunch, Green Acres. That show was real.
The Munsters for me. Huh? I used to love the Munsters on reruns.
The Munsters. Yeah. And I thought, like, you remember whenever I don't know if you thought this, but like you would see something, like you'd see TV in black and white, and I thought life was black and white then. I thought like no one saw color. I was like, what a weird time. Like, people, like, humanity has evolved. Like, we don't have gills or anything anymore. I really thought, like, one, I thought we had gills at one point. And two, I thought that I was like, wow, I mean, how sick would it have been if the world was still black and white?
I feel like everyone has dog vision.
Yeah, here we are in Technicolor. Like, that's how I really felt.
In Technicolor.
Yeah, I was like, wow. But we want to hear from you guys too. What it was like whenever you grew up and where you grew up. I think that's a cool thing too. I mean, I think it's so different depending on where you were geographically and generationally. So we hope that you guys liked like these little bit more like personal episodes. We sprinkle those in here from time to time. So don't get used to it because they're not something we do often. But we like to sprinkle them in whenever we have the willpower to do it. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, the links to all of our social media is going to be in the description box below. So thank you guys so much.
And if you like this video, go ahead and hit the little subscribe button for us right there. And again, now that we're on Pandora, you can listen to us audio on Pandora, as well as Spotify and Apple Podcast. I said Apple Podcast.
Apple Podcast.
Yeah, on Apple Podcast. If you want to listen to the audio version, or if you're just kind of driving or anything and you want to hear us, that's on there for you too. But that will do it for us on this personal edition of our basically Hall of History. This one was.
Yeah,
historical.
Kind of.
Yeah. As always.
Again, that's aging us again. Historical. Yeah, this ancient time.
As always, he's been Anthony, I've been Carlos, and remember,
Cut it out.
Until next time.